Creepers left and right, buzz like crazy. Everybody's trying to stimulate it. Spiders in the mirror and things can't be right. Back to the scene of a Friday night, to a blessed collision still frozen time. Spear drinkers, Cupid and the sound of her first chime. And why did you argue? Dreaming of those eyes, the best part of my life. And when we make love, babe, the world don't make a sound. The clock won't turn around. Ooh, you turn around 2,000 little fires, and no, your circle is spreading around from Mars. Keeping barely up with your pace, slowing things down when I wanted to race, catching up again when you try to chase. Feels like we're playing space. Always find a way to make up, right? Even when we're such a fly, even when tensions run high, you gotta soften up your sleeves, girl. You're never enough, babe. We're dreaming of those eyes, best part of my life.
Good morning, friends. Hello. How are y'all? I just decided to start a vlog today. I feel like I've been like I feel like I have been a little bit whiny, a little bit sad girl in a lot of my vlogs, and like that may or may not change. So I don't know, it's just where I'm at mentally and emotionally. Things are totally fine. I'm just emotional, you know, but I was just sitting here doing my lips, about to start my day. I dropped my kid off, my husband went to work, and my other son went to work, so now is usually the time when I go straight to the gym for an hour and then come home and start working like crazy. And I just thought, you know, I didn't just think, I just felt, I just want to vlog. I just want to talk to you. I just want to talk to you guys. So, that's what I'm doing. Pardon me while I do my lips real quick. Okay. I just do a little lip stain. These are like the Benefit knockoffs. I think that's what they're called, Benefit. I don't know. I don't use the expensive fancy makeup. Like, I use grocery store makeup most of the time. I have a few nice things like the Rare Beauty blush and the Tarte Ride or Die for under eyes. But yeah, anyway, I just do like a lip liner and then a lip tint. And yeah, I do put my makeup on before I go to the gym. Because I feel like when you feel pretty, you just are happier. At least I am. I feel like if I feel pretty, if I feel good about myself, then I'm going to have a better day. I'm going to have a better lift. I'm going to have a better workout. So anyway, I really love the idea of, come with me, let's go get in my truck. I really love the idea of 24-hour reading vlogs. I almost can never do them. What is that noise? Are my windows open? Yes, they are. It's like not fall weather here at all, but you know what? I'm gonna turn the Roomba on just a sec.
It is time, it's the perfect sound.
He's so cute.
Those three words spelled out in their eyes.
Recommend.
Hi. Okay, so we got Roomba started. We're in the truck. We're gonna head to the gym right now. And I have wanted to, in theory, I love the idea of 24-hour vlogs. I love watching them. I think they're such fun content. But I almost can never read for 24 hours. So then it always just ends up being like a vlog where I'm just like, just finish a book, Crystal. Just like finish a book and talk about it. So in theory, like, I want this to be a 24-hour reading vlog, but I know that's not going to happen. So we're just going to vlog. We're going to take you along with what I'm reading just because I want to. So my current audiobook I'm listening to is Grey Warren by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the last book in her Dreamer series, which is a spin-off of the Raven Cycle series. I haven't talked about Maggie Stiefvater in a while, but a few years ago I did mention her a lot because I have such a long history of loving and reading Maggie's books. I've read every single thing that well, no, I haven't read her like middle grade stuff, the stuff that she's written for young readers. But all of her YA stuff I've read and loved, and I actually knew of her when she was an artist before she was even published, because back then there was this daily painting movement that was happening, and so we both had art blogs that we were writing and doing a small daily painting and putting it on eBay and selling it, and so that's how I came to know her. And I own some of her art. I've met her in person. She's just a delight. She's one of those authors that I feel deeply connected to, probably the only author that I feel like deeply connected to, truthfully, but who I also feel like her books, her writing is so powerful and so good. So I've been putting off finishing this series for a long time, but I just sort of felt like I was in the mood for it. Plus my Libby holds came in, and I saw they were needing to get due back. Wow, I need to bring my tripod. Anyway, so I'll come back with some thoughts. I think that because this is the last book in a series, I'm not going to go into plot stuff, but I do want to talk about what I like about Maggie's writing and how I think she successfully creates intrigue and characters that you literally would die for. I'll talk a little bit about what I like and admire about her writing so much when I'm finished with that one. So yeah, I'm also currently reading, I'm almost finished with my arc for A Not So Distant Love. This is the sequel to Heart in the Highlands by Heidi Kimball, and I'm absolutely loving this. I'm like 70% of the way through. So those are the books that I'm reading right now. I do kind of want to just talk to you guys about some things that are on my mind as well as the books. This is just an excuse for me to vlog and talk to my friends. So I'll see you all soon when I have something to say. Thanks for being here. Hello, my friends. Okay, so guess what? It's been about a week. It's been about a week since I started this vlog, and I did a pretty terrible job of updating you on anything. So guess what? I finished 3 books since I spoke to you last. I finally finished my physical arc that I've been reading forever, but I really enjoyed that, so I'm going to talk about that one. And then I finished 2 audiobooks. So the first book that I opened with was Grey Warren by Maggie Stiefvater, and I talked a little bit about this book. So this series is a spin-off of her Raven Cycle series, which is like her most popular book. I feel like her most popular series. I feel like most people read the Raven Boys cycle. It had its heyday on BookTube back in the day, and I feel like a lot of people really love that. This is a spin-off featuring some characters from that universe, specifically Ronan and Adam and Declan. It really zeroes in on the Lynch brothers, which is Ronan, Matthew, Declan, who we see a little bit. Ronan is one of the main characters in the Raven Boys, and it's basically, without giving too much away, because I do want to talk about this, Ronan is able, he's one of the only ones able, at this time, when the Raven Cycle ends, he's one of the only people who is able to dream things to life. So he's called a dreamer. He falls asleep, he has these dreams, and he can bring something back into the world with him. Sometimes it's something very ordinary, sometimes like a raven, but it's always a little bit dreamt, like there's something dreamy about it. Sometimes it's something very extraordinary, sometimes it's something very dangerous. So it's a really cool concept, and this whole series revolves around the concept of dreamers bringing things into the world and the possibilities of what that would mean to our world. Like, who would use that for evil and who would use that for good, and how would that affect people? Like, how could that change the world? And eventually, like, how could that bring about the end of the world? So we have this really large scope of what this series is about. But at the heart of all of Maggie's books, they're deeply character driven. And I feel like this one very much is character driven, but I feel like the most character growth or insight we really get in this series is Declan, the older brother, who you really don't like in the Raven cycle. And I think that Maggie's ability to create characters that are so deeply flawed and so deeply relatable and have equal parts of things that you dislike about them and things that you really love and find endearing is just so masterful. I just adore how she does that. The way that she plays with her characters and the way that they interact with each other and the actions that they do to move the story forward is just absolutely fascinating to me. And even though sometimes the characters do things and I'm just like, you idiot, it feels so true to the characters and it feels very human. And something that, like, I feel like I could understand why they would make this choice. And I, reading this as an omniscient reader, knowing this is going to cause things to happen, it's sometimes I feel like readers in general, I see this a lot in the romance reading community, can look at characters and say, why would you do that? That's so stupid. Because we're looking through the lens of an omniscient reader knowing what is going to happen if they make this choice. And I think that a really great author will take characters and they will make them do something and we're like, oh, you idiot. But at the same time, we feel like, I understand why this character made that choice. This felt like the only choice this character could make at that time. And I think that's just such wonderful, masterful writing. And that's Maggie Stiefvater for me. She is excellent at characters. Like, I feel like if you love character studies, and you love this sort of mystical element that in a fantasy world that sort of blends with reality that isn't fully explained but has a lot of like intrigue and mystery surrounding it, I would highly recommend the Raven Cycle, because you really can't read this series without reading the Raven Cycle. But I ended up reading this, and there were parts of this book that I felt were very slow. And I think that that is something that Maggie does sort of deliberately. She takes you through these scenes that seem inconsequential, but they do show or shine a lens on something in that character's life that lets you know a little bit more about them and lets you know a little bit more about why they would make this choice or this decision that pushes the story forward. So in that respect, I do like it. But if you're reading this book purely for plot, I think you're going to be disappointed. Maggie does have really interesting plots and really solid stories, but this book of all of her books, I think, feels a little bit experimental. It feels a little bit Vonnegut-like in style, because we're in Ronan's head so much. We're in parts of him where he's in the dream world, we're parts of with him in the real world, and we're parts stuck in between where he doesn't know if he's in the dream world or the real world. And it feels very reminiscent of Vonnegut in that way, because we're skipping around to these different places and we never know exactly where we're at because Ronan's an unreliable narrator, and all of them are tying together this main theme of this book, which is largely family and loneliness and the desire to not be lonely. You know, there are so many just like heartbreaking things that Ronan does in this book to not be alone that just like gut me. And it feels like such a human, relatable thing that I just absolutely love. And that's why I ended up giving this book 5 stars. Because if you're reading this just for story, I think you could be disappointed. But if you are willing to see what Maggie is trying to say in here with her themes, you know, loneliness being just one of them, I think a big theme of this series specifically is the chronic illness. Maggie herself went through a period where she had an undiagnosed, mysterious chronic illness, and it deeply affected her life. And, you know, anybody who has a chronic illness, I think, can relate to that experience of feeling like there is something wrong with you, but you don't know what, and you go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and it affects your life so deeply, you know? So Ronan is sort of suffering. If he doesn't dream, if he's not able to dream and bring things out, he has what's called like night wash, where he like sort of bleeds dark stuff through his nose and everything. And it's really sort of like dark and interesting, because if he does not dream things to life, he will die. But he has to be careful about how he dreams things to life so that it doesn't hurt other people or kill other people or bring about the end of the world. And I just think it's so fascinating how she very cleverly connected her dreamers with having a chronic illness. I think that that is another huge theme of this book. So I absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I think it's fantastic, and there were so many beautiful things I think she had to say in here about family, being alone, not wanting to be alone, dealing with an illness, like so many things in here. Just powerful, beautiful book. I loved it, gave it 5 stars. When I was reading this book, or this is actually the second book, there were so many parts of these. I listened to them on audio. The audio is fantastic, but there were so many parts of these books that I wanted to just highlight and remember, just because of how Maggie writes. Her prose can be flowery and it can be very beautiful, but it can also be very succinct. And something she does with her prose that I particularly am a huge fan of is how she edits things down to get to the very heart, knife sharp point of that moment. She really has a way of just like cutting to the core of what she's trying to say. So in this book, we have Ronan, who is sort of like a bad boy character. People think he's like mean. He's, he really has this front presenting of being just mean and unkind to people all the time, but he's really not, So he's having this interaction with another character named Hennessy. Hennessy is a little bit sarcastic. She is not a huge fan of Ronan, and specifically how he kind of presents that front of just being cold and cruel. And so she deliberately picks at him, and she says, she's talking about Ronan's boyfriend. And she said, "Are you guys in love 5 ever? Or do you think you're a pretty board game to pass his time?" And she says that deliberately to like cause him to doubt Adam and how Adam feels for Ronan. And that's her saying that to Ronan. And then we have the third person point of view, and it says, "Now she sounded ugly too. But Ronan just picked up another phone and after a space mused, 'Your phone can be simpler than mine, of course. You'll only need to be able to call Jordan, right? There's no one else.' A single question, clear and factual. What a weapon." And he delivered it in the same tone he might have said anything else, so she didn't notice the blade of its meaning until it was stuck inside her. Suddenly, Hennessy had a very clear understanding that the cruel exterior Ronan Lynch wore was not all posture. Like, I love that so much, and I think that it maybe, you had to understand that Hennessy has nobody in her life, and so she's picking at Ronan, saying, "Oh, maybe your boyfriend doesn't really love you, maybe you're just a pretty thing to pass the time," and he sees what she's doing, and he cuts her right back without outright being rude or cruel. He deliberately says something to cut her apart, and it is, "There's nobody else. You don't have anyone in your life, right?" Oh my gosh, like that's the type of character interaction that I think is so masterfully done. Not very much is happening right there. Very, very small scene, little tiny bit of introspection, and not detailing everything out for you. But I just love Maggie Stiefvater. I think she's a fantastic writer, and I'm sad that series is over because, I've been a huge fan of Maggie Stiefvater forever. I've read each of the Raven Boys books as they came out, and now I'm finally done, and I'm sad. I'm sad about it. But, okay, so now the next book that I finished was A Not So Distant Love by Heidi Kimball. Switching gears completely because this is a historical romance. This is the sequel of Heart in the Highlands, which I've talked about a lot, which I really, really loved. And this is featuring the daughter of the couple that was in Heart in the Highlands. So at this point in the book, the daughter, her name is Charlotte, and she is set to inherit the Scottish dukedom. Like, she will be a duchess. At that time, there is a long author's note at the back of this book detailing how she researched, how she figured things out. And so there actually was a possibility for, if there was no one else, if there were no boys, that a Scottish dukedom, which had been, gifted to them from the English, could be passed down to a girl. So there is a possibility this could be actually factual. So Charlotte at this time has just sort of had a run-in with her season. She thought she was going to marry somebody. It ended up not working out, and so her reputation is a little tarnished. Her cousin is going to America to work on like a business opportunity, and she feels like very inspired to go to America too. She doesn't know why, but she just does feel that. This book does have some pretty heavy Christian themes in here, which I actually really enjoyed. I am a Christian, and I loved that message that was in here, but I am saying that in case you are someone who doesn't want to read that, just letting you know that is for sure in here. I felt like it was beautifully done. I felt like it really enhanced the characters, and I didn't feel like it was heavy-handed, but, you know, your mileage may vary. This also is closed door. So, I absolutely loved this book. I think that Heidi Kimball is such a talented author at writing just very sweeping, lush, beautiful historical romances that have really great character development with a lot of subtlety and nuance. I really like how she moves us through the story. I never felt bored when I was reading this book. I was intrigued with every interaction that the characters had, even if it wasn't with our main love interest, because this book does sort of show you the people surrounding our couple so that we get a fuller picture of who they are as people. That it is deeply romantic, but there are interactions that Charlotte has with the family she's staying with, and that Alec, our hero, who is a doctor, has with, like, an old woman that is his neighbor who supplies him with herbal medicines for his patients. You know, we have those types of interactions in here, and I feel like they just add depth to the story in a really beautiful and meaningful way. I did really also love the romance in here. It was slow burn. It was achingly beautiful romantic. And our hero, Alec, he is a grieving man. He's a widower, and he's a doctor. His wife died actually of cholera, I believe, and so he feels a lot of guilt for that because he's a doctor and he wasn't able to save her. So he's a very damaged hero. He is sort of like emotionally unavailable, working through his stuff. And Charlotte is so like bright and fresh and hopeful. She has so much faith and so much love, and she just feels so completely drawn to him, and he feels drawn to her too, but he's very guarded and very scared and not really sure how or if he wants to open himself up to love again. And I just can't get over this couple and how much I adored them. There were so many moments in here where Alec is noticing something about Charlotte, and it's something very small and very subtle, like, you know, her smile, or the way her hair curled, or the way it touched her neck, or how her dress fell. And it's just like these very soft and subtle romantic moments that he's noticing about her. And it very much fits the tone of the book. This is a sweet, beautiful, aching romance that is deeply emotional. But it was just such a sharp contrast to what I feel like I've been seeing so often in a lot of contemporary romances, where it feels like the hero's first impression of the heroine is something that is usually like pretty vulgar. You know, he's fantasizing about what her lips can do and blah, and I'm just sort of like, I'm so tired of that. I am so completely tired and bored with that. So this felt just like so fresh and beautiful and just delightful. I loved watching Alec heal and how Charlotte was a part of that, and I loved watching him hope for love with her. It was truly a beautiful book. So I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It is a slow moving story, so just so you're aware, like I want everyone to read these, but I want you guys to go in with like the best expectations. Like, I would say this is a clean romance. I know people don't like that word. I don't mean anything by it, but there's not even really any lead up to a closed door. This is very sweet and wholesome and just absolutely beautiful. And I don't mean that books that aren't like that are not good either. Like, I'm not saying that at all, so please don't come for me in the comments. I don't mean any harm by it, okay? But I just loved this couple. I thought it was beautifully written, tender, very emotional, very insightful look at the characters. And I just adored it. Every time our couple got together, like on page, they had on page time. Like it gave me those like falling in love feelings, like butterflies. It was beautiful. So this book comes out the end of October 24th or something like that. I loved it so much, and I highly recommend it. 5 stars. Okay, so now the last book that I read is One Dark Window. So I bought this book last year. I've been meaning to read it ever since then. I was so excited about it. I ended up listening to this on audio, even though I own this edition, because I'm a dummy and I do that all the time. But this is an adult, well, okay. A lot of the Goodreads reviews and a lot of TikTok says this is a YA fantasy. the author doesn't the author says it's adult fantasy as far as I can tell, and it is published by Orbit, which also, as far as I can tell, they only publish adult. That's Hatchett's imprint of science fiction and fantasy. So I believe this is adult. I mean, she's 20. Technically, that puts it in an adult category, you know, but also it's not published by a YA publisher, so that also, like, I don't feel like it's YA. So I was a little confused because a lot of reviewers were saying this is upper YA, and I'm just sort of like, but it's published by it's published by Orbit. That's their science fiction and fantasy, like. So, I don't know, but I will say, I was pretty disappointed in this. I gave this 3 stars. I don't think it's bad. It is a debut, but this is what I was talking about earlier with Not So Distant Love, when I was like, I want to set your expectations. My expectations for this book were not met. They were vastly different than what I got. Based on the synopsis, based on the cover, based on the fact that I found this in the adult, like, this was a book I picked up at Barnes & Noble. It was in the adult fantasy. I was looking for adult fantasy. And I was just sort of like, I am very excited about this. Like, the premise is we have our heroine, Elspeth Spindle. She lives in this kingdom of Blunder, which is having, like, a lot of, like, dark magic and things in there. She ends up catching a virus when she's 11, and then this virus is supposed to, like, it's really dangerous. A lot of people at the time will kill people who have this virus. One of the signs is you get, like, black veins that show up on your arms. They believe that if you get infected with this virus, that you have the potential to be, like, possessed or taken over by this monster, this demon. And I mean, that goes back to the whole, like, the town is, like, infected with this, like, dark magic, and one of the main plots of the book is she's trying to, like, free them with that, and she ends up meeting, like, a highwayman, and that's where romance comes in. And then, like, the magic system in here was actually really cool. It was around, like, cards, like tarot cards type of thing. But I feel like, and also, like, the writing quality was fine. This is a debut book. I think it's very solid writing quality for a debut book. It does have, like, a few tiny debut author things with the writing. But the first chapter in this is particularly strong. Like, really great setup, really great, you know, very intriguing with these ideas, with the characters. The writing was very evocative. I was like, I'm gonna love this. And then I just sort of felt like, I feel like my expectation for this book, based on, like, the cover, the synopsis, where I found it in the bookstore, that it was adult fantasy, and the whole idea of this maiden being sort of, like, sharing consciousness with a monster and a demon, and she's worried that he's going to, like, overtake her, and she's worried, like, is he fully bad? Like, I felt like there were so many interesting ideas in this book that really could have been explored, you could have gone so deep into this, and it could have just been, like, so fabulous. And, like, the way the first chapter, this again is a case where the first chapter is very, very strong, very evocative, has great potential, and then I feel like it just kind of went, meow. And my biggest complaint with this is that I don't feel like what I was promised, cover, synopsis, first chapter, delivered. This didn't go any deeper than the surface. This was very shallow, very surface level, and this did indeed feel young, and it felt YA, and I almost hate saying that, like, I've caught myself saying that in the past, specifically because I just recently finished this series by Maggie Stiefvater, which is technically YA, because it is published by a YA publishing house. It's published by Scholastic, and the characters in this book are not, I mean, they're college age, so this is the age of the characters. They're technically not YA, but because of who it's published by and the author has a history of YA, and it is designated as YA fantasy. This book does delve deep under those themes. It really explores them. It really asks questions of, like, what would happen if this occurred? Like, how would people react? Like, what are the consequences of this type of magic, of these type of characters, of this moral ambiguity? Like, this book was full of nuance and subtlety and just really deft maneuvering of themes and story and character. Like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing, right? And so I feel like it was a very interesting experience to go from this, which is YA, but feels very sophisticated, very intelligent, really, you know, and I'm not saying, I don't mean that to say that YA can't, because I think some of my favorite YA books are exactly that. like Angie Thomas, Laini Taylor, Maggie Stiefvater, Leigh Bardugo. Like, they're dealing with a lot of issues that young people want and to read about, but also make it appealing to a broad variety of ages, you know? And I am not saying at all, please don't misunderstand me. I do believe that YA books should first and foremost market and be readable for the age group they are written for. But I think this is a case of mismarketing. And I think one of the only reasons this is not YA is because there is a little bit of a sex scene in here. And that, at that point, it kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't necessary to the story. And instead of really dealing with some interesting themes and ideas and story motivations and plot and character, like, instead we just got this sort of spicy scene, which felt very much inserted for TikTok. And this book does have a chokehold on TikTok, and that just made me so frustrated. It wasn't necessary to the character or the story. It literally just felt like an indie romance with a spicy scene. I was like, I was so disappointed with this book. This reads like poor book talk fantasy romance. That's what it felt like. Not poor, because the writing quality was okay. But the way that this had such great ideas, and I felt like it really could have handled them and I felt like it was set up to, and then it just sort of didn't go there and ended up being very surface level, very shallow. And I hate to even compare it to YA because, I mean, I've read plenty of adult fantasy romances that feel very shallow, very surface level. So while I wouldn't call this a fantasy romance, this was not at all what I was expecting, and this was not at all what I was wanting. And if I knew that this was more along the lines of a book talk fantasy romance, I never would have picked it up, because I don't like those books at all. They don't offer what I find interesting. I'm not saying that isn't interesting to others, but it's not what I personally find interesting. So, disappointed. But again, 3 stars, mostly because of the concept. The writing was solid. And there were parts of the story, specifically towards the end, that were intriguing, and I liked the way this ended. But the overall tone of this didn't match what it was promising to deliver, and that was so disappointing for me. So, 3 stars. All right. There you go. I'm sorry that I didn't really update you until I had just finished my books. This is kind of just like a little reading update. But, I mean, like, when I started this vlog, I very much wanted to, like, talk to you every day, and then I just got so busy, and I just didn't take the time to open up my camera, so you get all my thoughts right now. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it. Let's see. For the emoji, how about you leave me a wolf or a dog for the cover of Grey Warren, and a wolf or a dog. And I'll see y'all in my next video.